I'm Katie Sewell, and this is A Bittersweet Moment with Tiffany Parks.
Hello and welcome to the Bittersweet Life. I'm Tiffany Parks, and this is your midweek Bittersweet Moment. Well, it is officially the depth of winter. Here in Rome, we are having the coldest weather we have had so far this winter, which, to be honest, is not saying that much. But it is coming up on the coldest time of the year traditionally and historically in Rome. And like every other little Roman child, and I am, of course, a child at heart, I am praying for snow. My son Aurelio has been dying to see snow for almost his entire life. He has only ever once experienced snow, and he was too little to remember it. So the temperatures tonight are set to go down to 2 degrees below 0 Celsius, which is just barely cold enough to snow, although there's no precipitation expected. So 99% likely we will not be getting any snow, at least in the next day or two. But we all hold out hope. And if you're from a place in the world that does not get a lot of snow, like myself, Seattle gets more snow now than it used to when I was a kid growing up there. Being from a place where you're definitely not guaranteed snow every year, even every couple of years, if that's you too, you probably understand where I'm coming from, that the idea of getting snow is just, it's beyond a school day, for the snow day for the kids. It's beyond sort of just like, oh, all of our plans are going to slide and we'll just have a fun day. It's so much more than that. It's kind of hard to explain to people who grow up in very, very snowy places just how exciting snow is for the rest of us. And poor little Aurelio and the poor little Roman kids, because at least in Seattle, we would get a nice carpet of snow once every couple of years. In Rome, it happens so rarely. But it has happened, and I have been here 3 different times when it snowed, and I thought I would talk a little bit about each of the famous Roman snowstorms in recent memory. Now, going back as far as my husband can remember, I, of course, was not in Rome in the 1980s, but my husband was, and he tells me that on Epiphany, the Befana, the famous early January holiday, which occurs on January 6th, there was a major snowstorm in Rome. Now, major snowstorm in Rome means a couple of inches. It definitely is not what you would think of as a major snowstorm in New York or in Chicago or in Montana or someplace like that, or in Montreal where I lived for a few years and kind of got over the snow for a while, but it's been a long time. So I'm back to being in love with snow. So I think there were 4 or 5 inches that year. Like I said, January 6th, and he remembers it very well, although he would have been a very, very little kid at the time. And that was in 1985. And then there were no real snowstorms. Like there was nothing that stuck, let's say, until 2010. Now in 2010, this is not one of the years that if you do a basic Google search, 2010 is not one of the years that pops up. You see 1956, 1985, 2012, and 2018. But I'm here to tell you that it snowed in 2010, and I have the photographs to prove it. It did stick to the ground, but it didn't stay for long. So it was February 12th, I can tell you because I'm looking at the photos and I can see the metadata, and it was February 12th, 2010. It snowed very, very early in the morning, probably around 6, 7 a.m. And I woke up and looked out my window and saw that it was snowing, could not believe it, because of course at that time in 2010, it had not snowed in Rome since 1985. Now there were moments of sort of freezing rain and very, very wet snow that pretty much turned to mush before it even hit the ground. But real snow that accumulates at least a centimeter had not happened in Rome since 1985. So it was a huge deal. And I put on my Wellington boots and I put on my warmest coat and furry hat, and I ran straight to the Pantheon. So I was living in Trastevere at the time on Via Garibaldi, and Via Garibaldi is it goes uphill, up towards the Gianicolo Hill, and so as probably everybody knows, the snow sticks more on the hills than it does in the valley. And so we had some accumulation, like on my balcony and on my street. And so I was very, very excited to experience snow in Rome. And the first place that I went, of course, was the Pantheon. The reason I went to the Pantheon was because I wanted to see what it would look like to see the snow coming through the oculus of the Pantheon. And it snowed really, really hard for a couple of hours. Like, I'm talking about like thick snow that you can barely see through. Big, fluffy flakes of snow. And that's why it shocks me that when you go onto Google and you look up, Rome snowstorms, you don't see this date. You only find it if you look on the sort of really, really detailed lists. I went into the Pantheon. I saw the snow coming through the oculus. I took a picture of it. It was with my dinky digital camera, my little Canon, because of course I had no smartphone at the time. I don't think they'd been invented yet. Correct me if I'm wrong. Or at least I didn't have one. And you can barely see it. You can barely capture it because, of course, inside the Pantheon is going to be much warmer than outside. And so the snow melted before it hit the ground. But I did see it. I can attest to the fact that I saw it. And I even have some photographic evidence, although it's not that impressive. And I walked around the city. I made it as far as St. Peter's Basilica. And I have some pictures sort of goofing off in the piazza. I ran into some friends up there and we took pictures of each other. And they're great because the snow is actually falling and you can clearly see these gigantic flakes in the photograph. And it calls to mind a photo that I have seen many times, which is a famous photo by the American photographer Leonard Freed, which was taken in St. Peter's Square, I assume in 1956 when there was another major snowstorm, and it's priests having a snowball fight in St. Peter's Square. It's a great photograph. And that was sort of my Leonard Freed moment. The snow did not last though. It was ended up being a really warm day. Like the sun came out at about 11 o'clock, 12. And by the time I made it home, and it's only about a 20-minute walk from St. Peter's to Via Garibaldi, the snow was gone. There was no trace of it. It was like it had never happened. It was completely gone. The next time it snowed was again in February, but this time in 2012. And I mean, that's kind of shocking that it snowed so close together. If you think about, there hadn't been a major snowstorm since the mid-50s, then the mid-80s, then 2010, and then again, it happens just 2 days later. Like I said, it was February again. It was between the night of the 3rd and the 4th of February. And that was a different kind of snowstorm to the one in 2010. Because the one in 2010 was big, fluffy, wet flakes that did not accumulate very much. They would accumulate briefly and then disappear. And so the fun of it was being out while it was snowing. But you didn't really see all the monuments of Rome completely covered in a layer of snow. Whereas in 2012, instead of snowing in the morning, it snowed during the night. And I remember I was living on Via San Francesco Ripa at the time with Claudio. We had been married for less than a year. And we looked out the window and it wasn't snowing anymore, but there were, I would guess, about 6 inches of snow it was everywhere. As it happens when it snows, it gets everywhere. And we decided to go out for a walk at dawn. And it was so magical. We didn't get to be out while it was snowing because it only snowed during the night. But unlike 2010, the snow stuck around. It stuck around for a couple of days. And we took an early morning walk up to Isola Tiberina, but it ended up being too cold, so we kind of came right back home. And later on, I went out for a walk with a friend, and we walked all over. We went to the Roman Forum. We went to Circus Maximus, there were kids and grown-ups sledding in Circus Maximus. It was such an amazing atmosphere, because here's this place where snow never happens, almost never happens. And so people get much, much more excited about it than they would in other parts of the world. It's such a beautiful place to be covered in snow. Like to see the statues along Via dei Fori Imperiali, all of them covered with snow, to see the fountains of Piazza Navona completely covered in snow, Castel Sant'Angelo. We went everywhere. It was truly beautiful. I'll never forget it. And I'm so glad that I was living in the center at the time, because if I'd been out where I live now, I wouldn't have been able to get into the center because it would have been impossible to drive because there are no snow plows in this town. And so when it snows, you just don't go anywhere. And in fact, it snowed again in 2018. And it was also February. So for whatever reason, February is the month of snow in Rome. And it snowed on the 26th of February. And it again was a pretty heavy snow. It snowed all through the morning. And we, of course, didn't go anywhere. We just stayed in our courtyard and made a snowman. And I have pictures of Aurelio playing with the snow. He tells me, I've never seen snow. And I said, actually, I have photographic evidence. I can prove that you have seen snow. But he doesn't remember it, alas, because he was not even 3 years old. He was 2.5. So he is praying for snow, and me as well, personally. And I have made a promise to him this year. And that promise is that this winter, he is going to see snow. And if the snow doesn't come to us, we are going to go to it. And luckily in Italy, it's not that hard to get to a snowy place. There are mountain ranges up and down the country. You're never really more than a couple of hours drive if you're in central or northern Italy from a snowy mountain where you can, at the very least, go sledding or snowshoeing. So that's my promise to him this year. So hopefully it'll just snow and then I won't have to go and find it. But if necessary, I will do that for him and frankly for myself, because I love a nice snowy outing as much as the next kid. So I hope that wherever you are, you get a little bit of snow, if that's what you're hoping for. And I hope that if you're in a very, very snowy place, that you get a respite from the snow, because I certainly know what it's like to have too much snow as well. Thanks so much for listening, and join us again. Bye.
Thanks for listening, and please become a subscriber to the show. Click that subscribe button on your podcast app. It's that easy. You know what also is easy? Right now, if you have your phone in your hand, pick one friend, just one, maybe two, just one, and send them a message suggesting that they subscribe to the Bittersweet Life too. We need your help to keep our community growing. Find videos and pictures and ongoing discussion questions on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Just search for the Bittersweet Life podcast. And we want to include you in the show. So send your questions and topics and your personal stories to us by email or by clicking contact at thebittersweetlife.net. Talk to you next week. Bye.